Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Life's Black Belts. I'm your host, Eric Alders. And as always, it is my pleasure to bring in front of the audience some people that I've had an opportunity to meet either in person or on the phone. And my goal is to highlight their story throughout life. Everyone has different expertises of what they're good at. They have different stories and how they balance work, career, and life. And what I try to do is utilize my experience as a lifelong martial artist, as a martial arts school owner. For the last 12 years, I owned the Karate Dojo, MMA, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Jackson, New Jersey. And what I try to do is not make this a martial arts podcast, but rather I try to make it an opportunity to use it as a metaphor or a parallel of how martial arts and the journey throughout the ranks compares to the journey through life as well, how we battle adversity, how we overcome failure, how we consistently reinvent ourselves, how you need perseverance to achieve certain levels. And even when you reach your goals, you kind of find out that there's still more in front of you, and that this is basically an opportunity on this planet for us to just better ourselves every single day. I started the podcast because I felt as though these stories were only given to celebrities. And throughout my experience in life, I've met so many amazing people with amazing stories and just doing great things. And I feel like their stories need to be highlighted as well. And they are the black belts in life. And today I'm going to be joined by our new Life's Black Belt, Richard Kaufman. And Richard is a Army veteran. And the thing that we're going to be diving into shortly is something that I think will touch just about every family in the world, whether you have a veteran in the family or not. And that is battling alcoholism and drug abuse. And we're going to be presenting that story as well as the challenges and struggles required to overcome that, and how someone can take such a tough situation and turn it around for the better. And that's what Richard's doing. He's out there right now. Not only in full recovery for many years, which we'll get to, but he is also helping many veterans and people in public as well to spread the good word of health and fitness. And he actually runs a GNC right now. We're going to get to all of that. I don't want to ruin any more of the story, but I would like to introduce today's Life's Black Belt. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Richard Kaufman, how are you, sir?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, sir. And, I did a little brief intro right there just to kind of pre-frame the conversation and why you're on the show. And as I mentioned, many of us in life have been touched by the story that you're about to go into. And I really think that hearing your experience, and I believe it's your goal as well, that you're going to want to try to use it as an opportunity to help someone else that's out there that may be in the current situation that you've been able to overcome. And I really hope this conversation does help touch a lot of people. But let's take a step back a little bit. I know when we spoke on the phone that you're currently located in New Jersey, like myself. Is that somewhere that you got your start, born and raised, or did you relocate there? Why don't we start a little bit at the beginning, give people a little background on yourself?
I was actually born and raised and lived in, I lived all over the state, but I was born in Newark, and I lived in Belleville probably till I was about 10 or 11.
Okay. North Jersey guy. Then if people aren't familiar, good North Jersey city towns, especially Newark, most people be familiar flying into it.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a tougher neighborhood growing up in Newark, I would imagine, or what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. I mean, we grew up pretty poor, one with just my mother. Father left at about 3 months old, when I was 3 months old. Mm-hmm. So my mom was a nurse, so she was always working. So, we were pretty poor at this time. So it was in rough neighborhoods, wherever we can afford.
Right. And going through schooling and growing up in the neighborhood, was it, sometimes when you're having economic struggles and you're in an inner city, sometimes it does, lead to, some tough altercations throughout school and growing up. Did you have that type of experience, or was it pretty?
I got my kicked a lot. Yeah.
You got your ass kicked a lot. Oh man.
Yeah.
And just cause, or were you being a punk, or what was going on?
Well, no, it was just, I was different, because now as I realized I had, like ADD, ADHD. So I wasn't like the normal kid. So not only was I poor, but I wasn't the normal kid.
Right.
You know,
Well, I
so
mean,
that,
say normal ADD, ADHD sometimes just means you're a little overactive, and it's tough for any children coming from experience of teaching children for the majority of my life that attention spans at different ages are not very long, especially for
yeah,
children. And to have children sitting in a classroom setting sometimes for 6 or 7 hours is not the model that works for everyone, especially if they have some ADD tendencies as well.
yeah.
So just you being a little rambunctious and out, a little bit, um, you know, extroverted and out there, maybe very talkative. Was that leading to people to bully you?
Well, yeah, yeah, and plus I was always trying to be the class clown.
Okay.
Just to try to become accepted.
Try to
And
get a laugh.
exactly, because hurting inside so much, but just trying to be that outgoing kind of person to not show the pain.
Now, when you're talking about that particular pain, in your youth, what are we referring to? We're referring to the fact of a single mom at the time. We're
Yep.
referring to your economic status. Would you expand on that a little bit for me?
Kind of like just growing up, not having a father, um, and growing up poor and not having a father were not two cool things. And then my mom wasn't really around because she was always working. So it was kind of like if I wasn't at school, I was, by myself. So it was kind of like when I got around people, I kind of just lost my mind.
Mm.
You know,
Now, did you have any other positive male influence in your life, like uncles or cousins or grandparents or anything like that?
I did, but I only got to see them very, very rarely.
Mm. I mean, a lot of people can relate to growing up in single family homes, and whether it's a single mother or father, it's challenging on either. And it's a very typical story that single parent is not around as much as they'd like to be because they're forced to work one or more jobs just to make enough money to get by.
Yeah.
I imagine that's what your mom was doing. What type of work was your mom in at that time?
He was a nurse.
Okay. I mean, definitely long hours with that job as well. And I'm sure when she was home, very tired and exhausted and needed to rest a lot with those shifts that they have to work as well.
Yep. And then working every other weekend.
So, I mean, you're, the class clown growing up through your neighborhood. Does that class clown status follow you through your high school as well and middle school? I mean, guide me a little bit. I know a little bit about your story as we highlighted it, that some of the future problems started, quite young. So, wherever you'd like to start with some of these significant memories that stand out to you.
Probably, like I said, we moved probably eight or 10 different places before I turned 10 or 11, and then we moved to Belleville, which is on a border of Nutley, which is, and that's when I had my first drink at like 11. It was a New Year's Eve, and me and my cousins were hanging out, and they went to bed, and I found Mom's stash, and that's when I had my first drink, and I was like, "Ooh, what is this?"
So where did your curiosity come from? Like, I thought when you were starting that story about hanging on New Year's Eve that maybe the cousins were all hanging out and it was.
Well, we were, but they went out. They went to sleep at like 10 o'clock.
Right. So that's my question then, is that you're then by yourself making this decision. Had you had a curiosity prior watching the adults around you drink, or what led you, do you think, in that moment by yourself without the peer pressure of cousins saying, "Now this looks like fun. Let's all check it out and let's do this together." You did that by yourself. Why?
Well, I mean, I grew up, and my mother's in recovery now because after I got clean, she got clean. So I seen her drinking as I was growing up. So I was just like, all right, it's no big deal. It's accepted.
Got it. And it's also then if she was an alcoholic as well, then it's in the family and it's in the blood a little bit.
It actually goes down to my grandfather, and so it's in the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those tendencies are difficult for a lot of families that have that as well. So at 11 years old, most children that would take the risk of sipping some alcohol usually have a horrible experience with how bad it tastes, and they may revisit it older as a teen in a party setting. But 11 years old, you took a sip and what happened?
I was hooked, and it was off to the races. I was hooked.
What did you drink?
As far as I can remember, would probably be like blackberry brandy.
Okay.
Something sweet.
So you have that experience. Is it a sip or the first day you're drinking and actually catching a buzz?
I was probably catching a buzz at that point. Yeah.
All right. And then
I wouldn't have went back to it if it was just had a nasty taste. That'd be, that's insanity.
of course. So then
Yeah.
what happened? I mean, 11 years old, you're like, I don't know, fifth or sixth grade at that time. So you're either in middle school or approaching middle school. How does that now impacting your youth when you're actually starting to sip alcohol? I imagine, does it start becoming something that you're repeating often and sneaking around and catching drinks more often?
Well, as much as I could, because you can always add so much water to your mom's alcohol before she knows it's watered down,
Right.
So,
Understood.
and then, every once in a while, whenever I could, I did it. And then when I started, being 12 and 13 and hanging out with other people and become a teenager, that's when I know I can get it, because I could just pay somebody to go to the liquor store and buy a case of beer and sit behind the railroad tracks and get drunk.
And did you run into any trouble in town or in school while drinking and trying to function?
Well, I quit high school in ninth grade because I wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
But I think the only time I never got legally in trouble until about 1989, and that's when I got in deep trouble because of alcohol.
Well, you say you stopped high school in ninth grade. Now, I know typically I don't know if the laws are different earlier, but I think that it's almost like a state law to have children remain in school through 16 at least. So how did that fly with your mom?
I might have got to finished ninth grade, but I don't remember, because a lot of it I don't remember. But I know I became an emancipated minor the day I turned 16.
Okay. So your mom reacted how when you said you're not going to school anymore?
Well, she knows that. I mean, ever since I was a kid coming up, the teachers always says, he's brilliant. He gets it all. It's just he doesn't apply himself.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't. It was just that I didn't. Like, I would be in class and they would teach me something, and I'd be like, "Okay, you taught me. Now what? Move on to the next thing," because my mind was always thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
and now, just to preface this, when I was going to daycare when I was really young, and the lady that taught me actually taught me to read and everything before I even got to school. So when I got into high school, I was reading on like a college senior level. So my mind was just racing and racing and racing and racing.
Right.
So, I was just like, all right, school, I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Right. You felt out of place, and it was difficult for you to fit in properly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're in a situation where you're no longer going to school. A lot of your friends are. You're still young. What are you doing with your time now?
Well, I mean, this is all coming out in the book that I wrote. Like the weekends, everybody was off of school, so we'd go out and party at my friend's house, and we'd be drinking, and we're all hanging out at the same time, 13 or 14 years old, 15. But they would be getting ready for school on Sunday night, and I would continue the party going, even if it was just by myself. And then that's what I would do all week, and I would pick up side jobs here and there, pumping gas or doing construction, day laboring, anything to make money so I could get somebody to go buy me some alcohol.
Right. And so as you're going through those ages right now, and what else are you going through in your mind? Your mom's still working. You're basically on your own working and drinking.
Yeah.
At what point, because I know you end up in the military, fast forwarding a little bit, what starts to change where you realize you need some kind of structure in your life, or did someone sit you down and have a conversation with you? How did that opportunity present itself where you were able to get involved with the military?
Okay. Well, at about the age of 13, mom would, she'd start getting off on weekends because she had seniority. So she would leave like $20 on the counter, and she would go to Pennsylvania for the weekend. So I was by myself all weekend anyway. So pretty much I was raising myself. And then one day I was walking past the Army recruiter, and I seen this video. They had a big video screen, and tanks jumping ravines. I'm like, I could do that. That looks cool. So I went in, signed the papers that day. And so there was no thought to it. It's just like, oh, that looks cool. Like, I get to blow up stuff. That's cool.
Okay.
And then I brought the papers home. Mom came and signed it that same day.
And at what age is this?
17. Well, actually 16, because back then you could join the military at 17 with your parents' permission.
Okay.
So the day I turned 17, a week later I shipped.
And where to?
Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay. So you do your training and your boot camp there. And then how is that experience for you going from a life of partying and alcohol to the structure that the military brings?
Well, this is a funny story that I even forgot to put it in the book. Before I decided, I was always a big wrestling fan. So I dyed my hair like Ric Flair. It was like platinum. I get to basic training, and you can imagine some kid from Jersey with long blonde hair, how much shit I caught from basic. So when they shaved it, it wouldn't even come out. My hair color was red, so they call me Red all through basic. So okay. I got shit on by all the drill sergeants, and so of course I became the class clown again. You know,
you went back to what was comfortable for you.
Exactly, and that went through my whole life, probably until about maybe. I could actually tell you the exact date, September 11th, 2001.
Okay. And obviously a very significant date for all of us. What was significant in changing you, or what stands out to you about that day?
Well, I joined the military. We were just talking about, I joined and I shipped basic, and it was weird because here I am, Jersey boy, you know, and I'm around all these people from Mississippi, Alabama, all these country boys, and I thought I was cool, and I'm even embarrassed to say this, but I do tell the story because it might help somebody. I was in a platoon with a guy. He was like 6'5", 250, and he was from Alabama. He kept on picking on me, calling me Red, and I used the N-word. Not thinking, I'm thinking, okay, I'm street tough, So he took me in one of our rooms, locked the door, and beat my ass for like 2 hours.
Wow.
And we walked out of there, and we are still best friends till today. And that was something, it changed my whole perspective, my whole perspective on, on how people are, that people are just people.
What transitioned from the ass whooping to the friendship?
Because he actually extended his hand to me, and then we actually talked.
So at the end of this altercation, he tries to make amends with you and tries to allow you to understand that your way of thinking is off, to say the least, and that there's actually good people that are out there regardless of their skin color.
Yep, and we're still best friends to this day, 30 years later.
So a lesson well received there for you. Sometimes I do tell my students that you could learn the easy way or the hard way. However, the hard way usually hurts. And
I've always been the guy that always has to learn the hard way.
Sometimes it's the best lesson taught, and as long as you come out on the other end of that, thankfully you didn't end up, killed or anything from that whooping that you took. So now that's a significant moment that stands out to you. And now while you're in basic, anything else? I'm sorry, you were talking about the September 11th event. Anything else that surrounded that you still wanted to bring up?
Oh, that's going to come later, because I get to Fort Hood, Kentucky. I become a full-time alcoholic, and I am introduced to acid. So not only am I an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict.
So while you're on base, you have access to a lot of alcohol, or is this like when you have time off?
Well, because we would work from like 5 a.m. to 4 p.m, and then we were off.
Okay.
So and I was still too young to drink, but everybody in the company they'd all bring beer back to their rooms, and if you're a soldier, if you're old enough to carry a weapon, you're old enough to have a beer.
Yeah,
And that's what they
obviously.
believed, so I
Right.
would get hammered 7 days a week.
How are you getting up as early as you need to get up in pristine shape with your bed tucked and made neatly and looking sharp and your boots polished when you're drinking 7 days a week?
That's why after 2 years they discharged me for drug and alcohol use.
All right. Well, when the acid came your way, you're just like, cool, try something new, or
Yeah, and my friend said try it. And I was like, all right, and I tried it, and then probably for a year and a half, every weekend from Friday to Sunday, that's what I would do.
and did you run into any situations? Obviously, you just mentioned briefly that it led to you eventually being discharged, but what occurred during this 2 years of binging on alcohol and drugs?
Uh, for some reason, being from Jersey is different, than living in Texas. I've never heard of a public intoxication, so I got arrested like 3 or 4 times for that.
Okay.
Missing formations, I got busted. Like I went from like E1 to E4 like 3 or 4 different times just for being, I would do great for a while and I'd screw up and then I'd get busted, and it was just that vicious circle.
Now, during this, was it just something that you accepted as, who you are, or were you having moments throughout those months where you were looking in the mirror and reflecting at yourself, like, what am I doing with myself? Or did that not even enter your mind at that point?
Honestly, it didn't even enter my mind. And then I met the owner of a club, and he invited me to come down and hang out. And I was at the club every night, 7 days a week for like a year and a half. So I was kind of just hanging out and partying and just thinking, well, the military is going to pay me every 2 weeks to go party. So guess what? I was never thinking about career. I was never thinking about putting money away. It was just another way to get alcohol.
Right. You're just using it as an opportunity to continue your habit and party and have a good time and still not take life seriously and
And
still
get to travel the world.
and it's so, I mean, you said you were in Kentucky to start. Where else did you have an opportunity to visit?
Fort Hood, Germany, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, a lot of different places I went. Got to have fun with.
All right. And were you at that time, were you involved in any sort of major missions, or
No,
what was it?
it was all basically just force protection, stuff like that.
Okay.
Nothing exciting.
All right. So now 2 years of drinking and alcohol abuse lead me up to the moment then where it reaches its ultimatum of, I guess, your superiors realizing that you are not a fit for the Army.
Well, they put me on a funeral detail, and I didn't think this guy was going to die anytime soon. Um, so I went out and partied, of course. He died that Saturday. The funeral was supposed to be Sunday. I wound up drunk in Dallas, Texas. I lost my wallet. I had to get, and I got a public intoxication again. And I had to be brought back by my first sergeant. He had to come pick me up 4 hours away. So got back, and they were like, "All right, you're gonna be busted. 45 days extra duty, 45 days restriction, and then you're on the plane home."
Wow.
And that was it. That was a wrap.
And what's going on in your head at that moment when you realize this pipe dream of partying on the Army's dollar is coming to an end?
Well, then I'm like, because my mother was always so proud, that I joined the military because she always wanted to join the military. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I talk myself out of this? How do I tell my mom, because I signed up for 4 years. How do I tell her that I'm coming home in 2?
Right.
And so I called her and I was like, I'm going to be home. And she's like, why? I'm like, well, the military's drawing down and I was doing such a good job that they let me go 2 years early.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually got put out with a general discharge.
Okay.
So
Did she find out the real story or no?
years later, when I came clean and, when I got sober, I told her.
So what happened when you came home? What was the next path for you?
Well, my mother got remarried. Me and him never got along, and a lot of it, 100% of it I'd say is me. Just being that, excuse my language, that asshole.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of it as like because he worked 2 jobs, 6 days a week, and I never gave that he gets up at 5 o'clock every morning to go to work. I never gave him the respect that he pays all the bills. So it was just a difficult situation. Me coming back, and all of a sudden, I'm able to party 7 days a week. To now having to come home and be in at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And so that didn't last long. I got the boot probably a month after I got back. So I got a job. I found a girlfriend, and I got a job with her father. So I was making pretty decent money, but I was still had that drinking attitude, So I wound up living in a crack house, to where so I was renting out a room in a crack house for maybe about a year.
Wow. So, I can't imagine you were being surrounded by the best people at that time. So were you diving into more narcotics at the time?
No, just the usual stuff. I tried cocaine twice, and I was like, this is it. Yeah. I'm like, this is really what you guys are crazy about? So I never tried it again. I tried marijuana twice, and I was like, all right, I'm not into it. So it was just alcohol at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, let me see. So then what happened was I got so bad into alcohol that I would get paid on a Friday, and I would drink my whole paycheck that night. So I wasn't able to afford the crack house. That's sad when you can't afford to live in a crack house. That I actually lived in my car probably for about 6 months to a year, lived in my truck.
I mean, Richard, you're just in this short span of time, from drinking at 11 or 12 years old, constant arrests, or citations for, drunken intoxication, getting booted from the military, ending up in a crack house, getting kicked out of a crack house, living inside your car. I mean, is there still not a moment where you're looking at yourself in the mirror going, what am I doing with my life?
No, not at all. I was just
blissfully ignorant.
Yeah, it was just like, whatever comes, whatever happens.
Do you feel like you were depressed at the time? Do you feel like you had a thought that maybe your life was going to be short and you didn't care if you died young, or were you just a free spirit, or what?
Well, like I tell people today, I didn't expect to live to the age of 25. So everything else, like now I'll be 50 in January. Everything else is just gravy.
Right.
This is all just, I'm just living on, golden time now. I never expect to make it to 25.
Well, I think if you have the mindset, if someone has a mindset that they're going to die young, obviously that'll change your behavior quite significantly. And, the choices that some of us would make to try drugs or alcohol, some of the things that hold us back are our dreams for our future and our career and our families and all that. But if you think that you're going to be dead at 25, that probably weighed in a lot to why you did the things that you did, I would imagine.
But now also I want to let your listeners know that everything I ever did was my fault. I don't ever put it on anybody else. No matter how bad my growing up was, nobody has to act out like that. It was all my fault. I don't blame anybody else.
Well, obviously, one of the major steps in any type of recovery or even learning is admitting when you're wrong, admitting when you made a mistake, and learning from it. I mean, every single person makes mistakes. I think the challenge is that we're not always taught properly how to cope with those errors and how to, for lack of a better word, man up and admit that responsibility and the ownership that you have. It is very typical of people to blame everyone else around them, which is why they usually carry their issues much further in life. Yeah. So at what point did you start to take the responsibility, or was there an intervention? I mean, you're still, after everything you experienced, now living in a car just outside of a crack house. I mean, does it get worse from there before it gets better? Or, I mean, at what point does it start to take a turn?
Well, what happened was I decided to go back to school, even though, it was bartending school. So here's an alcoholic going to school to be a bartender. So that wasn't smart.
Right.
But it was January. It was December 30. It was New Year's Eve, 1989. I graduate from bartending school, and a friend of mine who's a police officer says, you know what, why don't you come down and bartend at my bar that I have? And he's like, so I was like, all right, So I get to work and everything's going good, and people are buying me drinks, so on and so forth. And I woke up, the next morning with like $5,000 cash in my pocket, and with the police knocking on the door. I robbed the place. I took all the money that was in the till and put it in my pocket. And the gentleman, he knew me personally. He's like, all right, I'm not going to bring you down. You have a choice. You can pay the money back, which I did, because I had it all. I was so drunk I didn't get a chance to spend it. He says, and you have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, or else you're going to jail. At this point, I was too pretty to go to jail. So I hit 90 meetings in 90 days, and I haven't touched a drink or a drug in 30 years now.
Do you even remember taking the money?
No, I don't
So
remember I don't remember how I got home.
You woke up with the police knocking on your door, having no idea what's going on. What money? And then, oh, there it is.
Yep, and I mean, all my pockets were full of cash.
Oh man.
And that's why when I was doing my book, and I had to call my mom because I didn't remember all the details, so I had to call her and to remind me, what actually happened, because like I was too drunk to remember.
So rock bottom.
That was probably one of the rock bottoms. Yeah, that's the first rock bottom that I had.
Okay. All right. So now you're inside of is this Alcohol Anonymous or something similar? Okay.
Yep.
So you're going through the 90 days. Are you resistant to the things that are being taught to you early on, and then you transition in, or how do you accept what's going on around you and what they're trying to guide you through this process of detoxing and learning why you're doing what you're doing and how to overcome it?
Well, when I first went, like when I got sober, I was only 20 years old. So I got sober before most people even started drinking.
Right.
So when I got to the program, there were these old crusty guys, 40, 50 years old. Like I'm the old crusty guy now, where they just told me, sit down, shut up, and do what you're told for 90 days. And I was like, all right, my life sucks. I'm at the bottom. So whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do. And that's exactly what I did. Okay. I went in full bore.
All right. You made a commitment that it was time to change.
Yep. I said, I got to do something, because I know that, because every time I went into the rooms, I had to sign the paperwork because the police officer saw that I went to the program.
Right.
So if I didn't go, I'm going to jail.
Right. So you had a pretty good motivation to make sure you showed up every day.
Yep. But then after the 90 days, I just like, you know what? I'm going to go tomorrow. I'm going to go the next day. And I did like 380 days in a row or something stupid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you finally transition out of that, what's next for you? I imagine you got to feel like a completely different man at this point, being sober for a year after basically being drunk since you're in middle school.
Yeah.
And all these stories that you just shared with us, you know what I mean? You got to feel healthier. You got to feel like you have more energy. You got to feel clearer in your mind. What's during this process? I assume you're trying to figure out goals or what you want to do with your life. So when you come out of this, are you on a mission? What's the next thing that you're trying to attack?
Well, a lot of it, I came out more depressed because now I've seen how much time I actually wasted. Because like now I see my friends, because at this age you're 20, 21, they're graduating college, or almost about to graduate college. Some are in their own businesses. Some are, doing this and that. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm sitting here in an AA meeting, So it's kind of like when you do the steps, you kind of realize, how bad you really screwed the pooch. You're like, oh, this sucks.
Right. So you reflected a lot on your past mistakes and it weighed heavy on you.
Yeah. And then I met another girl. We got together and we decided to move to Pennsylvania. And I got a job there, and I still kept going to meetings. And then I got an itch to join the military again. And I had to get a waiver signed, just saying that I haven't had any arrests or anything like that in the last couple of years. And they let me back into Pennsylvania National Guard.
Okay. And was this a different experience than the first time around?
Uh, Not really. I was sober, but I still had a chip on my shoulder. I was still an asshole. I would, and I went through the same thing. I would get promoted, then I would get busted again for doing something stupid. I was
Mhm.
good. So at this time, they're about to throw me out again. But I get a chance to move to South Carolina to buy a house. So we moved to South Carolina, and I joined the National Guard in South Carolina. So I've been thrown out once, almost thrown out another time. I
Right, but
get
the second time you got thrown out though was just because of bad behavior. You didn't drop
well,
back to your
well,
habits.
well, the second time I didn't get. I almost got thrown out. They didn't throw me out, thank God.
Right.
So I get to South Carolina National Guard, and I moved there like 1999, and I still kept up my old ways, and the whole seesaw, getting busted, getting promoted, the whole thing. And I'm due to be discharged again September 24th, 2001. And then 9/11 happens. And this is where my whole life turned around. Being from Jersey, of course, we knew people that worked in the towers and stuff. So my wife at the time, she says, "Come here." And I'm like, "What?" And we're watching everything that happened. And something broke in me. Something just, it just broke me. And I decided that I'm going to dedicate the rest of my military career, if I still have one, to the people we lost.
Sure.
And everything happened, and then I I called my company commander and my first sergeant. I said, I need to talk with you guys. So I went and talked with them, and they gave me another chance. And within 2 years, I became Soldier of the Year, and I retired with 24 years in the military.
Richard, man. What a incredible, significant change of events in your life. I mean, sometimes it's a person, a mentor. I guess in one situation there, you had a police officer that could have done something different and thrown you in jail and gave you an opportunity. It still wasn't enough. And it took something like this to be the virtual smack in the face to shake you a little bit and wake you up and be like, man, what are you doing here? And you felt, man, I can't imagine what you felt. I'm just imagining when you felt like the mistakes you talked about coming out of rehab and how difficult it was for you to realize how much time you wasted. This had to be a moment where you looked back and probably realized what good you could have done up to this point, and there was no more room for excuses. Is that on track, or am I off there?
No, you're there. And sorry, I got a little bit. I always get emotional when I talk about it.
No, I listen, I don't think there's many people that were alive at that time that can't remember where they were, what they were doing. And I'm not even, connected with the military at all, but I could remember very clearly, listening to the reports and kind of dismissing it at first. I know I think everyone thought it was just some small little plane that you hear that lands on the parkway and, people's backyards. It was something like that. And then once it really started becoming known, I remember leaving work with my father. We worked together at the time and went to the house and turned the TV on and saw the buildings burning. And I remember watching the first tower crash live on TV.
Yeah.
Overwhelming.
So the thing that really got me is just these guys that these police officers and firefighters, they were running in to help people while everybody else was running away, and they had a meaning to their life, and my life had no meaning at that time. So I was like, you know what, now I dedicate the rest of my military career to those we've lost, to maybe I can make a difference and give back instead of always being the guy that's always taken my whole life. I want to start giving back. And I never missed a drill. I've never, even when I moved to New Jersey, like we would have drills, which was like a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I would drive from New Jersey, 13 hours to South Carolina, be at drill, and I would come back, drive 13 hours. And I never missed a day in 24 years.
Wow. And what was your expertise at that time when you were in the Guard for 24 years?
Tank commander.
Okay.
But the hard part is my guys they'd be mad at me because I would be like, I just drove 13 hours. There's no way you should ever miss a drill.
Mm-hmm.
If I can make it 13 hours each way.
Right.
No
what's your excuse? Yeah.
Exactly. So they didn't have excuses. They're like, come on, Sarge. I'm like, no, man. If I can do it, you can do it. I became that guy that everybody looked up to, and I became that old crusty guy that wanted to take care of everybody and give instead of just take. The guy that would always try to be funny and make jokes was still there, but it was more in a positive way now.
Mm-hmm.
I was the kind of guy that if I was unmotivated, the whole company was going to be unmotivated that day. So I kind of changed my mindset instead of being, the guy that always has to be on all the time to get negative feedback. Now I do it to get positive feedback.
Right. You changed the entire approach of your life and what your mission was. And a lot of people, again, when they're in these rock bottom moments and consistently have these setbacks, sometimes they get caught up in a feeling that they're a failure and that this is just their life and, they got a bad shake. And through these types of stories that we share, we realize that there's always an opportunity to make a change in your life and to turn things around and to really contribute back, and to what you said right there, to stop making excuses and do what needs to be done for the betterment of yourself and for those around you. Yeah. So during these 24 years, so with National Guard, you're also holding a full-time job at this time?
Yep. And anywhere I've ever lived or worked, I always had a job either at a gym or at a GNC or like little vitamin shop companies. I've always had, that's something that's always interested me. So that ever since I was like 18, even when I was homeless in my car, I would have these bodybuilding magazines that I would just read all the time, and just fitness magazines. It was just something that intrigued me. I guess maybe because my mom was in the health field, maybe. I don't know what it was, but and I've been doing the same thing for going on 30 years now. Still doing it.
So now you are a manager or general manager of a store?
Yep, general manager of the #1 store in the state of New Jersey.
The #1 store. Wow.
Yep. I've been here 9 years in the store, and I'm very blessed to be where I'm at to do what I do, and I get to help people. So I'm still giving back. It's all about giving back in my life now.
From a guy who is the least healthiest alcoholic and drug addict that also lived in a crack house to your top #1 GNC store manager.
Yep. And, and I feel blessed because I'm able to help people. Like I had a lady come in the other day. She lost 160 pounds from my advice, and she's off all of her medications. So I'm actually changing lives every single day. And I feel so blessed to be able to do it instead of just take like I used to be.
Well, when was it time for you to decide to take your story? Now, again, it could have ended there where you got yourself together and finished your service with honor and got this opportunity to manage a really popular chain that's known worldwide. What changed inside of you that you wanted to dive back into your past and start to share your stories with others?
Oh, well, I forgot to tell you why. I would have done 30 years, but I got hurt on active duty.
Okay.
I was backing up a Humvee, and instead of him hitting the brakes, he hit the gas and he ran over me. Ran over my head and the right side of my body.
Oh, my God.
So I'm blind in this eye, blind in my left eye. And so what happened was the military decided, since you can't shoot, we don't need you. So they put me out, medically discharged me, not put me out, but they medically retired me. And I got into a deep, dark, very dark place, but I still didn't use or, drink or drug. And then I finally started clawing my way back. And then what happened was I joined a veterans tribe, a veterans group in on Facebook, and I met a guy, and he invited me on his podcast because I was telling him about how I work with guys in the NFL, Major League Baseball, WWE, and he's like, yes. So he got on me. He got me on the podcast, and we started talking about that. And then he wanted to go deep in my past, and I started talking about that. And I kept trying to switch up to go to the stuff I'm doing now. He's like, no, I want to hear about the stuff that's in your past. That's the stuff that's going to change people's lives. And so I came to realization that, maybe it needs to be heard that if I can come back, anybody can come back. And from then on, it was just podcasts as podcasts, speaking engagements, people hearing, you've been through all that stuff and you're still making it, And so I just started, to get out there. And have you ever seen a movie, 8 Mile?
Yes.
Well, I was talking to the guy, Donnie. He has a podcast called Success Champions. And he's like, I want you to watch the end of that movie again. So I watched the end of it. And the whole part where the guy's battle rapping and Eminem just starts telling him every bad thing he ever did. And he's like, that's what you need to do. So I went out on Facebook the next day and put every bad thing I've ever done out on Facebook. And the reason why I did it is just because if people can see that I'm being honest and caring and, what can people say to me anymore? They can say, okay, you were a drug addict. Okay, now what? I was an alcoholic. Now what? I got a beautiful wife. I got 3 beautiful kids, a beautiful home. If I can make it, anybody can make it. And that's how I became the comeback coach. Now I actually help people come back from different stuff like that.
Incredible, man. So you started getting out and speaking a little bit more after this opportunity on the podcast, and I would imagine started meeting some people and started realizing that your story was touching some others. Yeah. And from any of these conversations or talks that you've done, have you heard any feedback positively from people that were influenced by what you had to say?
Well, I've actually had people message me on Facebook because I always tell anybody, if you want to get in touch with me, just, Richard Kaufman on Facebook, message me. I'll always get back to you. I've had maybe like 10 or 20 people say, listen, since I've heard your story, I checked into rehab. I'm going to the program. I'm getting help. I've actually gotten 2 phone calls. One guy was about to hang himself and another guy was about to jump off the side of a building. And they're like, I just need you to talk to me. And I talked to them and they got help that they needed. So now it seems like, my wife asked me, why do I do podcasts and all that? I'm like, so I can, give back to, somebody stepped up for me when I was younger. And now I want to be that person to step up for other people. Because especially now with the opioid crisis, a lot of people they don't know where to go. They don't, pride's a killer. Mm-hmm. And, if I can be that guy that'll just, put it all out there and say, if I can make it, there's no reason why you can't make it. So that's what my goal is, for the rest of my life. That's my mission.
Well, having a wife now and 3 children as well. How old are the children?
I got a 16-year-old, 13, and 6.
Boys, girls, mix?
2 boys and a girl.
Okay. So I can imagine that having this history travel back to your grandfather of alcoholism and you experiencing it and your mother experiencing it as well, what have you done differently with educating your children so that hopefully this could skip and end with you?
Well, when I first started, when I moved back here 9 years ago, I would tell my kids that I was going to AA meeting, so they always knew I was an alcoholic. And every time I came home from a meeting, I would bring home Dunkin' Donuts. So it would always be a positive thing. If they ever heard, oh, Dad going to a meeting, well, we get donuts. So it's a good thing. So, I've never thought of it as, I always tell my kids, I'm allergic to alcohol. Your mother can have a glass of wine. It's not a big deal. I have it in the house. I got beer downstairs. It's not a big deal. I don't drink it, but it's not my issue. Like they say in the program, it's not my circus. It's not my monkey. I can't tell you, if I'm allergic to it, then I can't let anybody else not live their life, But like if we're going out for dinner and a waiter asks me, would you like a drink? And I'd be like, no, I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs. They laugh about it.
That's
and
great.
and then it's over. So it's kind of, my kids know my situation, but they're proud of me for it at the same time, But I never let it think as a negative, because if you teach a kid, well, something's bad, well, guess what? When they turn 18, they're going to do what the bad thing is.
Well, I think what you chose to do, which is what I would advise, is to be honest, to be upfront, to not be embarrassed by your past, because it's ultimately our goal as parents to raise our children to be functional human beings that can contribute back to society and do a great job when we're no longer around. And there are some parents that would have gone through what you have gone through and marked it as a dark part of their past. They've overcome it. It's gone. It's embarrassing. Don't want to talk about it anymore. That's not who I was. And it would be too difficult of a conversation to talk to my children about. That's how a lot of people pursue that path, because maybe that's an easier path for them. And for you, you chose to be open and honest and upfront about it and educate them from early on. And I think that's probably one of the greatest gifts you could have given them.
Well, I mean, even like I said, I only have like a formal 9th grade education, but I've read almost 6,000 books in my lifetime. I always read books on guys that came back from, big stuff, kind of. Those are the kind of people that always attracted me, like autobiographies, people that have come back. So I figured, what better story tell is my story, and people to think, if he made it, only has a 9th grade education to now running $1 million company, I can do it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it sounds like that through this experience, you talked about reading 6,000 books, that you also have just completed writing A Hero's Journey, a book that you're looking to bring out shortly. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yep. What it is, and now the Hero's Journey, it's actually a play on words. Now, I'm really blessed to be able to write this, and I actually wrote the Christopher Reeve Foundation and asked them if I can use their quote on the first page of the book. And they're actually letting me use a quote from Christopher Reeve about heroes. And what it is, the book is going to sell for $35.22. The reason why I did that, because most people hear about the 22 veterans a day committing suicide, but they never hear about that. The number is actually 35 a day. 22 veterans, 1 active duty soldier, and the rest are first responders commit suicide every day. So that's 35 first responders commit suicide every day, 365 days a year. That's why the price is going to be $35.22. And 35% of the proceeds are going to a nonprofit to help with suicide awareness.
What's the name of that nonprofit? Real quick, what's the name of that nonprofit?
They can look it up. It's JFT, the number 22, TO0. And
is that the Joint Task Force 22?
Yep, 22 to 0. Yep.
Okay, 22 to 0.
And the first part of the book is my life story. The second part of the book is how to see people that are going through depression. What are the signs? And then then the next chapter is what are the signs of alcoholism and drug addiction. And then the next is where people can actually get help. There's going to be a bunch of links where people can actually, if they need help, they can actually get help. Mm-hmm. And that's why. And in the end, it explains that the only real heroes are the ones that ran into the building that day and never came home. Those are the real heroes.
Right.
So I am no way a hero at all, but that's the way I just get it. So it'll come back to the people that are actually really heroes.
Well, I would jump in there for a moment and let you know that hero describes a variety of characteristics in somebody. A hero is someone that decides to put others before themselves. A hero is somebody that is facing tremendous adversity and obstacles in their life, and they don't give up and they push past. A hero is someone that takes responsibility for their actions and decides that they want to make the proper decisions to live the best life possible, as well as make themselves the best person possible. And if they can contribute back to the community around them and help to support them, whatever that may mean. Obviously, the heroes that ran into the buildings that day are beyond comparison to other levels. But serving as many years as you did in the military, even though you don't have the perfect rosy story, you have faced so many different obstacles and failures in your life, some of which you obviously admit are for your own doing, your own decisions, your own stupidity, if you will. You accept responsibility for that. But there's a lot of people that could have gone through one of the 20 things you've listed and fell flat on their face and ended up in jail or dead or worse. And you have decided to turn that life around. You used an opportunity to get yourself back into the military, to become one of the top soldiers on base, to help influence soldiers around you. You've had an opportunity to get involved with health and fitness and help people live a healthier life. You're not just sitting back on your story and sharing it with friends. You're getting out there and you're helping people understand the signs of depression and alcoholism and how you might help them. You're taking it a step further and going on podcasts like these to share your story. You're writing a book. You're raising 3 children, hopefully, that will never have to deal with the pressures and stresses of being an alcoholic and drug addict because you've been honest with them. And you're continuing to put others before yourself and influence and save people's life to the point that you're even going to make a significant donation from the proceeds of your book to help save people's lives. So I have to jump in and acknowledge that you are, sir, a hero. Maybe you don't want to compare yourself to a 9/11 hero, but there are different heroes in this world. There are different leaders in this world. There's different levels. And if you want to put them at level 100 of the top, I don't care if you're level 4 or you're level 99. If you are significantly trying to do some of the things I listed about contributing back, learning about yourself, giving back, and trying to help those around you and putting your fellow man and community ahead of you, there is a sign of a hero there. And just like you had trouble accepting some other parts of your life in the past before you were able to make a change, I think as long as it never became, which I would never even imagine this with the only negative would be is if you ever got so conceited that you had an entitlement of I'm a hero and I deserve all these things. I would never even imagine that you'd ever even think that. But I think if you acknowledge that the part of the hero I want you to understand is that when you acknowledge that you are that person, I think you'll take even more pride in the mission that you now have. Like maybe you didn't serve to that 30th year and you got medically discharged. But how many people got run over by a Humvee and kept going, man? I mean, like, honestly, you just kept getting knocked. It's like a Rocky Balboa story, getting knocked down. And in round 15, you're still standing, dude. So don't discredit what you've done in accomplishment. Obviously, there's regrets and there's doubts and there's things you could have done differently. But we are who we are today, and we're making decisions that you make today to change things around. So I think if you acknowledge a little bit that this is your new mission and you are the new general of this mission and you have the opportunity to influence people for another 20, 30 years, take pride in that and don't dismiss it is all I would like to say.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said, and when my friend Donnie, he said, like, everybody loves the comeback story. He's like, that's why people love Rocky. If he would have just lost and never came back, nobody would have cared. But, he said, that's what you need. There's so many people that want to, that need to hear a story of people that are coming back but are just hard charging, and that's why I'm willing to put everything out there. Like I tell, anytime I go on any podcast, there's no question I won't answer.
Right.
There's nothing that I'll hide in my past, and people, like when I go speak in jails and rehabs, people smell bullshit. If you go into a jail and they think that you're not the real deal, they'll smell it out in a minute. Mm-hmm. That's why I just try to be as open and honest as I can about everything that I've been through,
Well, again, my goal, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the recording here, is that's my goal with this. I have twin girls. I'm married. I own a business. My wife's a general manager of Starbucks. We're busy. Life is busy. So, like you said, your wife was like, why are you going on podcast? My wife is like, why are you spending an hour or two or more of your week doing podcasts when you could be spending your time doing all these other things. It's not like you're getting, because I'm not getting paid for it. Obviously,
Yeah, me too.
It's new. But I feel the need to give back and contribute, because this is what I teach my students. There is a need for me to want to try to give back, and if I could use a skill set of conversation and utilize this venue to highlight, there are so many people that are out there, and I think that's what people need to hear. Everyone feels like when they're going through their shit that it's just them. Why me? Everyone else has got it easy. They look at everyone's rosy Facebook pages and the world is freaking wonderful, but no one knows what's going on behind closed doors. No one knows what's going on inside your head. We all have our demons. We all have our struggles. I think the more that people get to hear real people like yourself and other guests that I've had on the show and their stories, they start to realize that, listen, we're all in this together. And if you just wake up each day and you just try to present your best, whether that's your 20% today, 80% tomorrow, 100% next week, you just try to do your best. You make your mistakes, you admit them, you learn from them, you grow, you try to better yourself each day. You try to treat people around you with a little bit more kindness. And maybe we can't change the entire world, but we could try to change the world one person at a time, one story at a time. And that's why I love having people like you on the show to highlight it, because if it weren't for something like this, maybe there's a lot of people out there that never would have heard this story, and you're really on a path that I think is just getting started, is what it sounds like to me.
Well, see, that's why I tell people to follow me on my Facebook page, because twice a week I actually do Facebook Lives and talking about different subjects that people are going through or I'm going through.
So let's go there then. Let's take a moment. If people would like to follow you, see when the book comes out, what websites, social media links, and so on. I'll include that in the show notes. But where could people find you?
Richard Kaufman, which is just me, But now I have like 5,000 friends. I can't accept any more friends. So now I'm starting to get a lot of followers. Or they can just look up the Comeback Coach on Instagram.
Okay.
But yep. So I do, like, on Mondays, it's called Monday Night Comebacks. Like this Monday was, the subject was, how come we can't ask for help? Why can if somebody has our opinion, we'll give our opinion, but we can't ask anybody for help. And then on a Friday, I usually do a Friday afternoon, Freedom Friday, about any whatever the subject is going to be that day. Like today's going to be about, don't let people rent space in your head for free if they're not paying your rent. And it's just twice a week I just come out. So whatever the person I am now is a person you'll always see all the time. So my Facebook page is just who I am, and you can see, and I get messages all types through the day from all different countries. And that's how I talk to people. Because when I met Gary Vee, he's like, you have to find whatever your medium is and triple down on that. I was thinking about hosting a podcast. I do have a podcast, but I only do like 3-minute quips once a week. It's called Recovery and Redemption. But I decided to triple down on Facebook and Facebook Lives.
Okay.
Because then I can actually interact with people. People can ask questions. And you know what I mean? It's kind of more interactive instead of me having a podcast. And I don't like asking people questions.
Sure.
So I'm not a good podcast host.
That's okay. Well, you're doing a great job as a guest. And then A Hero's Journey. When did you expect that to be released?
Well, the funny thing is, I wrote it out by hand, and I'm not very technologically savvy. So I had to ask my 13-year-old, what is Microsoft Word? So now he's teaching me how to input everything into Microsoft Word.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good.
So probably in the middle of November is going to be the release date.
Okay, very good. So what I want to do as we're coming to a close is that if you had an opportunity, if there is someone that's listening to this and themselves are going through some similar struggles, or maybe they have a family member and not really sure what to do, or if there's any, lasting words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to leave the audience with, the floor is yours.
Probably the only thing I would say is my problem when I was growing up, I guess it was just a matter of being pride you know. And the thing I would say is, if you're going through struggles, if you're going through addictions, whatever you're going through, is that there is a way out. It's not where you're from, it's where you end up at. And the best thing I could think, if I was going to talk to a 12 or 13-year-old me, would be humble and be teachable. Because I think if you're humble and teachable, the world is your oyster. Mm-hmm. And now as I get older, I have more questions than I do answers. Now I'm actually looking for more mentors in my life to, teach me more. Where, like, when I was younger, I thought I knew it all and I didn't know anything. So, just be humble and teachable, and don't be afraid to reach out. People are willing to help you. A lot of free people are willing to do it for free. Just reach out and, just reach out.
Absolutely. I mean, we say the same thing to our students because everyone's looking to try to figure out how do you reach these high levels of excellence with martial arts. And it's literally, you need to show up each day. You need to check your ego at the door. You need to walk in with an open mind, ask questions, be willing to accept that you're going to fail a lot. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be uncomfortable, but you have to learn to make that part of your normal routine. And through the consistency and perseverance of not quitting, you will get better. You will improve, and you will reach, heights that you didn't see imaginable. So obviously for me, getting people involved at a young age or even at an older age with a really good quality martial arts program, I think goes a long way because you have a lot of a positive influence, a lot of good mentors, a lot of good structure that surrounds that. But
well, like one of my mentors, Ed Milet, says, the enemy of greatness is being comfortable. So get uncomfortable being comfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Which is exactly what I was just trying to say as well there. It's really important because, for us, we go into very physically uncomfortable situations, but it's not just physical. You have to deal with the mental side of what does it feel like when, I don't know, if you're in a grappling situation and someone's got their knee on their chest and they're trying to choke you and break your arm. You know what I mean? Well, at the end of that match, we hug each other and we love each other and we're best friends. But in those moments, you feel like you're going to die sometimes. So mentally, you have to learn to remain calm and push through. And I think it teaches you in life as well that life constantly throws you curveballs and makes you uncomfortable. And you just have to accept that's just the way it is. You got to just breathe and just take it one step at a time and just do the best you can. And I think another point you brought up is don't be afraid to ask for help. Some people love giving help to others, but have difficulty asking for help themselves. Yeah. And it is important to have a village of people around you that love you, care about you, and support you. And hopefully through that love and support of people that are around you, we could avoid all of these suicides that you're bringing up each day, and try to just pay attention to those people around you in your life and try to look for any signs of behavioral changes and ask them questions and be willing to lend them an ear or a hug or try to get them the help that they need if you notice that they have something going on.
Yeah. And like Ed says, also something I'm starting to believe in my life now is nothing happens to you, it happens for you.
Right. What's your lesson? What's your lesson in the situation? Right.
Exactly. It's like I can either get stressed out about it or like in the military, if something's going down, like my wife, when something happens in our household and the shit hits the fan, I actually calm down and actually can figure it out before, instead of blowing up. And I guess the martial arts that I was taught, my sensei taught me that, never fight angry.
Right.
Because it's everything. Once you get everything to slow down, you can figure anything out.
Right.
So if something's happening to you, figure out why, and then figure out what you can learn from it or where you can get better at.
Right. Well, I think when we ask ourselves questions, you often get answers. So they say, if you ask yourself a stupid question, you might get a stupid answer. So if you're only asking why me, why does this crap keep happening to me, you're probably going to get some shitty answers in response. But if you take the same situation and you go, what's my lesson here? What am I supposed to learn from this? I'm supposed to learn something from this. The answer changes and your approach to the situation changes. Sometimes it's just a mindset of how you have to go about it and ask the right questions to yourself.
Yeah, like I was talking to somebody yesterday and we were talking about relationships and how many relationships I've been through, a couple marriages and stuff. And I'm like, well, if I've had all bad relationships and I'm the common denominator, guess what? I'm the problem.
Right.
Not everybody else. I'm the problem. So I got unfuck myself.
Well, that's a difficult situation we mentioned earlier in the show, is that it's very difficult for people to look in the mirror and point the finger at themselves and take the blame and to take responsibility and ownership over their actions. Again, I'll tell people, and I've said it on the show before, you don't have control of anybody in this world other than yourself. You may be able to influence others or inspire others, but literally the only person you can control is yourself. So you have to learn how to control your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, your responses to people. If someone's being rude to you, you have control of how you're able to respond to them. I can't control their rudeness or their attitude, but I can control my response to it. Yeah. And again, one at a time, we try to change how we are and how we respond to others around us. Hopefully that continues to spread. So, Richard, you brought up some really great points here. Again, I think you're at the beginning of your hero's journey. You've done a lot so far, and I think you have a lot still to do. And I really look forward to seeing the finished product of the book and following you on social media and seeing what's next for you. As I mentioned to you on the phone, I love getting in front of groups of people and talking and influencing and trying to add my lifetime of experience as well. So if there's ever a group of people that you're in front of and you need someone to stand by your side and add to the conversation, I'd be happy to collaborate and work with you and support the efforts of what you're doing, sir, especially since we're both Jersey boys.
Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I will leave all the show notes, so please take a look. Again, you could always find a direct feed at lifesblackbelts.buzzsprout.com. The show is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. Ask any Alexa Alexa-enabled device. You say any pod, play Life's Black Belts. But of course, you can follow us on social media. Every handle is pretty much at Life's Black Belts. You can look me up, Eric Alders or Eric G. Alders. You'll see a lot of that on my personal side. Email lifesblackbelts@gmail.com. We look forward to you following Richard and staying tuned for our next episode. So, Richard, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, today's Life's Black Belt, Mr. Richard Kaufman.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You, sir, as well.